All right. While the last few people kind of start joining, I'm going to go ahead and start going through some of our introductory stuff. My name is Devin. I'm with ClubExpress. I'm one of our training engineers. I'm also the person that, if you have ad hoc reporting questions, they probably point you to me. I do a lot of the work with our developers and with our support team on answering questions about ad hoc reporting. Before we get too deep into the description stuff, let's go ahead and do a bit of our housekeeping. So all of your mics and phones are muted at the moment. If you have any questions, please enter them into the chat window. We have Sam with us who will be helping to answer questions throughout this webinar. And then, of course, at the end, we will take some of those questions and we'll answer them and do a bit of a demonstration on them. We are also recording this session. So afterwards, if you want to go back and rewatch anything, or if you weren't able to make it, it'll be on our YouTube channel to watch later on. We also have other training material available on that YouTube channel. I'll show you how to get to our channel in just a second. And I'll also talk to you about reviews in a second here as well. If you want to catch all of our upcoming ad hoc reporting webinars, as well as all of our other announcements and training webinars, you can always go to clubexpress.com and click on the calendar option in the top right. We keep a running log of our upcoming sessions, and there you can register for them ahead of time. You don't have to register for them ahead of time, but if you do, there is a section where you can enter questions to make sure that there are things that we address during that webinar, because we can't always get to all of the questions in our Q&A. But if you enter it there, then that's something we can prepare for ahead of time and make sure that those questions get answered. If you like all of the training that we do, you can always go to our YouTube channel and subscribe. That way you'll get a little notification whenever we post videos. We don't ask you to subscribe just to bounce up our viewership numbers, but also just to make sure that you are aware whenever we're having version announcements or things like webinar series like these. If you happen to miss one, you can still go back and catch anything you miss on our YouTube channel. You can always find us. It's just clubexpress.com if you search that on YouTube, and the dot in there is spelled out, so DOTCOM. Lastly, we do love to get reviews, not just to fuel our egos, but also to help people who are looking for membership management software find us and find out if we're the right choice for them. So you can always go to clubexpress.com/reviews. We just love to hear from our clients and hear how we're working for you, and also hear how we can better our product. All right, today we're going to be talking about ad hoc reporting. This is our first part, as Sam said, in a multi-part series. Today we're going to be going over the basics, kind of the basic navigation, the pricing, and how to build the most basic of reports, an express report. Before I get into it, I do want to talk about what ad hoc reporting just is at a very high level view. It is a report builder. So all of you who use ClubExpress regularly know that we have reports all over ClubExpress. There are reports for events, there's reports for additional member data, there's reports for just about everything that exists in ClubExpress. The difference is with ad hoc reporting, you can make your own and mix and match fields and create a report that does exactly what you need it to, whereas the rest of the reports in ClubExpress are predefined. So there's no way for you to add more fields or remove unnecessary fields unless you were to export it into, say, Excel, and then remove the data you don't need. So ad hoc reporting is a tool where you can go in and say, this report is going to do only what I need and exactly what I need, and you can build it yourself. It is one of our more complex tools, which is why we do a lot of training on it and a lot of support for it. And it's also one of the reasons that it's a recurring charge tool. We do work with a third-party software developer to help bring us the ability to use this tool. Because we work with a third party on it, this makes this one of the only tools that is an annual purchase instead of a one-time fee like almost all of our other added cost modules. Being an added cost module, there are a few different pricing options for ad hoc reporting. Again, this is a very unique module to ClubExpress. Almost all of our add-on modules, like I said, are one-time fees. This one is a recurring fee. So because of that, we felt it necessary to include a 30-day trial. So whenever you sign up for ad hoc reporting, and I'm going to walk you through that step here in just a minute, you'll see that there's three options for you to choose when you're signing up for ad hoc reporting. The first option is a 30-day trial. This will let you use the tool uninhibited for 30 days. You can build as many reports as you want. You can run and export them all you want. We don't put any limits on it. We give you a full month to try it out and make sure it's right, because we don't want anyone signing up for ad hoc reporting and then finding out it's not right for them, because, you know, we want to make sure that if you're going to pay for it, it's what you need. The next option down when you're signing up for ad hoc reporting is the standard option, which is $200 per year. And it's billed right when you sign up through whatever bank account you have set up with ClubExpress for paying your monthly ClubExpress dues. So it'll come out of that same bank the same way you pay your monthly fees. And then further down from the standard option is an option with scheduling, which is $300 per year. These are the same module. The only difference of the version with scheduling, which is $100 more, is that once you build reports, you can do what's called scheduling them, and it will automatically run that report and email it to whatever email addresses you want. So that way it stops you from having to go into the module and manually run them. So with the $200 a year version, if you build a report and you want access to it, you have to go into ad hoc reporting and run that report. Whereas with scheduling, you can say, send me this report every day, every week, every month, twice a year, and it will automatically run that report and email it to you with the most recent data. So that's what the with scheduling version does. Once we're done looking at how to enable and purchase ad hoc reporting, we'll take a look at the basic navigation, how to get around once you're inside the module, because it looks very different from the normal ClubExpress views. And then after that, we're going to go through how to build an express report, which is, you know, just the most simple version of ad hoc reporting, where you can just drag and drop the fields you want, set up some pretty basic filtering, and maybe add a chart or two. That's all we're going to get into. There are other versions of reports within ad hoc reporting. You can do things like advanced reports and dashboards and drill downs and reports within reports. We'll get into some of those later on in this summer series, but today we're going to do just a very basic look at it and just a way to get you started and familiarized with the tool. Nothing too complex just yet. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at the navigation. I'm going to go ahead first. Before that, I'm going to switch over to my demo club. So I'm going to share my screen. So this is a demo club that's probably familiar to a lot of you who have come to our webinars before. This is our Chicago Association of Financial Planners. This is a demo website, and I'm signed in as an administrator, Martin Smith, at the moment. So once you're logged into your website as an administrator, you can always find ad hoc reporting in the control panel. Under the association tab, it may be called the club tab or the organization tab for you. This tab can change names, but you'll always find it between the money and communication tab. And when you go to this middle association tab, you'll find ad hoc reporting, oddly enough, in two places. You'll find it under setup for ad hoc reporting configure. And once you've turned on ad hoc reporting, you'll find it underneath admin functions. This is a tool that is only available to administrators, or people that are assigned as coordinators to have access to it. So it's not going to show up in the website modules, because members cannot access this. This is a behind the scenes tool only. When you go to ad hoc reporting for the very first time, you're going to come down to setup and click on ad hoc reporting configure. And that will take you to this screen. If you've already enabled it, you'll have this go to ad hoc reports button. But before you've enabled it, you'll have three options here. I've already turned it on for right now, so I won't see my very first option, which is the trial. If you choose the 30-day free trial and hit save changes, then the module will get turned on. You'll see this go to ad hoc reports button, and you'll also see it in the admin functions in your control panel. Right now, I have the site set up with the standard ad hoc reporting $200 per year. And if you're going to make any changes, you have to click this I agree option to say I agree to the fee for ad hoc reporting. But once you turn it on and you save these changes, it's going to automatically bill your organization, and it'll be turned on for you to start accessing immediately. Once you've enabled ad hoc reporting and you've paid for it, you will have ad hoc reporting through the end of the year from the date that you enabled it. And I'll show you where you can see in just a minute once we get into the module. I'll show you where you can see how long you have left on your subscription. And if you're done with your subscription, you can always come back to the same screen and choose cancel subscription if you no longer need access to the reporting tool. A note about that: if you do cancel your subscription, there's not a way for you to continue receiving those reports or accessing those reports. Those reports are only visible while you have the ad hoc reporting tool enabled. So let's go ahead and go back to our control panel and access this module the normal way, which is by going to the control panel, going under admin functions. And when we click on ad hoc reporting, it's going to do something that only ad hoc reporting does, which is it's going to open a whole new tab and take us out of our ClubExpress website. So when I click on this, I am now in a completely separate tab. I still have my control panel open here in a different tab. But in this tab of my browser, I have now opened up ad hoc reporting. You'll notice this is very different from the normal ClubExpress kind of look and feel, because this is a tool developed by a third-party company called Exago. And in fact, we have the manual right here from Exago. So let's go over what you're going to see the very first time you open up ad hoc reporting. At the very top, you're going to have the name of your organization. And then next to that, you'll have this information about how long your subscription to ad hoc reporting is available. You'll see mine is good through 2040 because this is one of our demo sites. But if you sign up, say today or tomorrow, then it would say, July 20th or 21st through 2023. And then that would renew every year going forward, unless you choose to cancel your subscription. Across the top, we have this filter options. That's something that we'll use for advanced filtering later on, so we can ignore that for now. And then this little question mark icon. Clicking on this question mark icon will do the same thing that it does normally in ClubExpress, which is it'll open help.clubexpress.com specifically to the page that you are on. So right now we are on ad hoc reporting. So if I click on this question mark, it takes us to the ClubExpress help information on ad hoc reporting, specifically that opening screen. But right now we're going to focus on this home page of ad hoc reporting. You'll notice that across the top over here, we have tabs very similar to a web browser. The navigation of ad hoc reporting is tab based. So right now, the only tab we have is home. So this is this section right here is the ad hoc reporting homepage. So you'll see here's the ClubExpress logo. It'll let you know that you're in ad hoc reporting. And the first thing you're going to see are any important notes that we have. So whenever we add new fields or add new information or update the module, you will see a little notice from us letting you know what changes have been made right here on the homepage. Below that, we have the two primary training videos from ClubExpress on how to build both Express View reports and Advanced View reports. Those are very top level views of how to get started on those. And then below that, we have two manuals, one from us, ClubExpress, about the ad hoc reporting tool and how it integrates with ClubExpress. And below that, we have the Exago, which is our third-party software vendor. This is the user guide from Exago. We haven't really changed a whole lot from the tool for Exago. The biggest differences for ClubExpress are the actual data points and data fields you can pull in. All of the information about how to use this tool from Exago will apply to our website. And then below here, this is a list of Exago YouTube videos. Similar to how ClubExpress does webinars and training videos, so does Exago. And this is actually the method, these videos right here. I spent a lot of time watching and rewatching all of these, and this is pretty much exclusively how I learned to use the tool. I also did read a lot of their user guides, but I am almost exclusively self-taught on ad hoc reporting, just primarily from these YouTube videos and their user guides. So these are very, very helpful resources if you ever need to go and just spend some time really getting familiar with the tool. I highly recommend, spending some time with these. And as these get updated and as the module is updated, we replace these links with the most up-to-date YouTube videos. And then obviously when we change things, we'll let you know up in this important notes section. On the left-hand side over here by default is our report viewer. So these are all of our folders, and you'll recognize this is a very simple folder viewer. You'll always have, no matter what site you're on, you'll always have this shared reports folder, as well as any folders that you've created for your reports. And this is just where, once you've created a report, this is where they live. This is where you can access them. Under shared reports, these are always going to be the reports that ClubExpress has made as examples. They may not always be perfect for your organization because, the whole reason we bought and signed up for ad hoc reporting is so that we can make our own reports. You may not want to just use the standard ones that ClubExpress made. Once you've made your own reports, you can add them to these folders over here, which you can always do just by hitting add folder, and it'll create a new folder just like in a Windows computer or in a Mac or anything like that. It's just going to create more folders for you to use, and I can just call it, new folder 1. And now there's a new folder with nothing in it. Below here, you'll see here's some previous reports that we've made. Just kind of, this is our demo website. So these are all just kind of demo reports that we've made before. Right now, we are going to look at our July webinar reports. So these are 3 reports that I made just to show off how you can use, and I'm actually going to step through how these are created in just a second. But once you open a report, you can either do that by double clicking on it, or you can click this play icon and it will automatically just run the report as is without changing anything. Or you can click on these little 3 lines and it will give you the options of what you can do. You can rename it, you can duplicate it or delete it. You can choose to export it, which is download a version of the report outside of Exago. And these are the different formats that reports can be exported as. So we've got Excel format, PDFs, RTF means rich text format. Most times that just means Word, Microsoft Word for most people. If you're on a Mac, maybe Pages, or CSV, which is an Excel file without formatting. So if you were to just do Excel, it would include all the formatting and your lines might not be one-to-one. Whereas with a CSV, all of the data rows take up just one line. So if you're looking to manipulate it once it's outside of the run, the CSV is probably the best choice for you. If you run a report, that is different from exporting it. Ad Hoc Reporting has its own report viewer. So once you run a report, you are looking at that report within Ad Hoc Reports. And there are some really nice features that come with using Ad Hoc Reporting to view your reports as opposed to maybe a PDF. And then lastly, at the top of this, we have Edit. If we click Edit, or if we double click on this, that does the same thing. It will open our report in a new tab up here on this little tab navigator. So I'm going to go ahead and just double click on this. And you'll see I get a new tab, July Webinar Demo. And here I have opened my Express View editor with my report. And you'll see right now, none of this data makes any sense because this is just an example placeholder for us to use while we're editing this report. I do have the option to run the report to see the live data. So before I go into how to get to this point, let's take a look at what it looks like when we run it. So now we can see here's the live data from our website. And there's how our data is organized. We can see here's all of our members, their information, and the financial information. So right now, this is just a report basically on members and what money they have spent on our website within a certain time frame. But before we get too deep into what we're looking at, let's start talking about how we actually got to this point. So I'm going to start fresh. I'm going to close this tab because I don't want to look at that existing report. I want to start a brand new report. So up here in the top left, I have this plus icon, which will always mean creating a new report. This gives us a whole bunch of options, but right now today, we're just going to look at the very first option, which is our Express View. This is the easiest way to build a new report within Ad Hoc Reporting. So if I click on Express View, we will get a blank canvas. You'll see before we had all of that, bright colors and information here. But right now, it's just a blank canvas for us to do whatever we want with. And you'll see on the left-hand side over here, this left bar changes. We used to be looking at our reports, but now we are looking at fields. This is all the information within ClubExpress. There are always fields that we have missed, and we are always adding more and more fields, especially as ClubExpress grows. Every time we put out a new version of ClubExpress, it always comes with more fields, and then it takes us a few weeks to get all of those fields into Ad Hoc Reporting so that you can look at them. And then obviously there will always be fields here that are associated with other extra cost modules you may have purchased. So these are all of our current data categories on Chicago Association of Financial Planners. So for example, we have things like membership, which is probably our most used category within Ad Hoc Reporting. We also have things like money, organization, which is for chaptered organizations and looking at your committees. It goes pretty broad across the board. You'll also see things like e-learning and continuing education. So those are 2 other extra cost modules that if we didn't have those enabled, wouldn't show up. So Ad Hoc Reporting can realize once you've added other extra cost modules and will add them to the data set that you are able to pull information from. So these are the broad categories that you can pull information from. And you'll see, just like our report folders, we've got this little caret here where we can drop down to look at our subcategories. And within each of these, we have all of our more detailed, more granular information about our organization. We have things like our members and our membership history and our interests. And once we click the caret to drop these down, so let's take a look at members, you'll see here's all of our actual data fields for our members. So you'll see that within members, there's a lot of data because we can accept a lot of data about our members. So for the most basic of reports, let's just go ahead and grab their name. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to click on full name. I'm going to drag it into my canvas over here. And at this point, you know, however simple it may be, I have created a report. I can hit run. And there's a list of my members. I can hit stop. And now I'm back to my report editor. So all I have to do to just get basic information is drag the fields I want, and it will always associate them in a line. So let's say I wanted all of my members, and when they expire, I can come over here to my members field. I can go find their expiration date, and I can also just drag this over. And now I've got two fields. I've got my members and my expiration date. And if I run, you'll see in a line, I've got Barbara Jones, and I've got the date that she expires. So the way ad hoc reporting works is it's going to create one data row for every piece of applicable information. One kind of trap a lot of people get into is that they think that they've come across duplication errors whenever they add data fields that might duplicate things. So if I go over to my additional member data. So let's close this members section over here. If I go to membership and member additional data, if I were to add, say, published to this, and I go down to find someone who is published, I had set this up ahead of time. There we go. So here we have Susan Adam, and she has chosen to answer the published additional member data question multiple times. She has multiple answers selected for this, and you'll see that she gets duplicated here. Susan Adam, Susan Adam, Susan Adam, Susan Adam, multiple times because there are multiple responses. So this is one of the scenarios where the more data you add, you might run into things like this. And then we can do things called grouping, which will kind of solve this. So I'll show you that in just a second here. But just an example of the way ad hoc reporting works is every unique piece of data is going to get its own line whenever we run a report with these fields in it. And if that unique piece of data doesn't have a corresponding unique piece of data, it's going to duplicate it for us. So Susan Adam answered unpublished. She also answered published. She also answered not applicable. So for each item she checked, she's going to get a unique row. So now that we've got some data in here that we want to look at, we can start doing some fun things with moving things around within this report. If we look across this top bar over here, you'll see each of these icons, each of these rows has a few places where we can make changes. We've got full name and expiration date, and each one has this little circle and these little arrows at the top. If we click on this circle, it's going to give us this little control wheel. We can choose to remove. We can choose to filter on this information. We can choose to alphabetize or sort our data based on this column, or we can do what's called grouping. Grouping is going to do two things at once. It's going to sort all of our data by this column, and then it is going to put all of the other data below it. So if I click on group for first name, it takes first name and puts it at the top of a row, and the rest of the data gets shoved below it. So if we take a look at this right now, we get Aaron, and their expiration date is 12/31. And then we get Abby, and that expiration date. And then next to expiration date is still that published information. So if we wanted to get even more specific with it, if we go over to published, we can choose another one of these options. which is our filter wheel, and we can choose to filter on this. I only want information about people who have answered this published question. So I can come over here to this group and I can choose filter. And it's going to take me over on this right-hand side to my filter options. I'll go over the rest of these tools in just a second, but right now under filter, when I click filter, it adds it over here. I can also just add more filters manually by dragging and dropping. So there I just dragged another data field, but I don't want to filter on that at the moment. And when you're filtering, you need to answer two different questions. You have this option for how are you filtering it? Are you looking for it to be equal to something or not equal to? You can do, if it's numerical, you can do, or a date field, you can do greater than, less than. You can even do things like is between or is not between. So if you're looking for a certain date range, say, June to August, you could say is between, and it'll give you two different fields where you can say, June to August. But right now we are looking at the member additional data published field. And so what we want to do is say, I don't want it to be blank. And so this is something a lot of people don't think about is, right, just simply because I've said I don't want it to be equal to, if I leave this blank, the system will actually read that as I'm not looking for anything blank. And so if I leave this alone just like that, and I hit run, now I'm not seeing any of the people where this was left blank. I'm only getting answers where the information has been entered. So once again, we're going to see, here's a name and someone who has answered multiple times, and we're getting this duplication effect. Anytime we're getting duplication, the easiest answer is to group by that data. So there's obviously only one expiration date. So once again, let's go ahead and pause, and we can actually group multiple times. Oopsies, I didn't mean to do that. Expiration date. So if I group again, now you'll see we have grouped by full name and grouped by expiration date. And then the data we're looking at is what's their published response to additional member data. So now we'll see we have George, his expiration date of 8/11/23, and the only data we're looking at is the answer to that additional member data question, and then it lists it out here. Now that we've got this kind of organized in a like linear way, at the bottom of each section, you'll see there's an option for how do we want to summarize this information. The default is always count. It's going to count the number of lines that are generated in that report, and it'll tell you how many. So if we look back at the existing version, there was one response for a CJ test, and so it says count 1. For George Abba, there are 5, and so it's going to give us a count of 5. If it is a numerical response, you can actually choose to choose a minimum or maximum. You can do things like distinct count. Distinct count is different than a regular count. Distinct count will only count for different answers. So if someone answers an additional member data question the same way 3 times, it would only count that once. And then we can also choose to say, I don't really, I don't need one. I can leave it blank. And so now my counts are blank at the bottom of these. The next thing I wanted to go over are the other items over here in this top right section. So we have, if we select a cell, this first option is our formatting. So obviously we can do things like changing font color, changing font size. You can change things to be bold or italic or bold and italic. You can change the alignment of these. So this is just a simple font control where you can say, I want to change the look of my report. And then the other option we have over here on the right-hand side is the formula option. So when I click on one of these, it gives me a formula editor. Those of you who are very familiar with Excel or SQL formula writing will probably get more use out of this. And this is something we'll take a bigger look at when we're doing our advanced reports, where the formula editor is kind of an integral part of that. For now, I'm just letting you know where you can access the formula editor in here. I'm not going to go in depth on teaching you how to build complex formulas, because I could spend an entire hour just talking about that. But this is the simple place where you can access and do, different types of formatting things, where if you wanted to, add bold, or if you wanted to add like if questions, you can do things like that if you have the know-how. Again, we'll go in depth a bit more on formulas in part 2 of this session. The second tab over here is our report formatting. This is where we can change themes like our color theme. So right now we've got this standard kind of, bright kindergarten colors, bright primary colors, but we also have the option to choose different types of color themes for our reports if you prefer seeing things in a different way. Or you can go and switch to custom and choose your manual color grouping down here at the bottom. And then your alternating shading colors right here, you'll notice whenever we run a report, it goes gray, white, like a lot of standardized reports do. But you can actually, choose to vary that multiple ways. So now it's gray, white, red, or you can just say, I want them all to be gray. And now they will all be in that line. So the default is obviously gray, white, so that you can help distinguish the lines whenever you're looking at this report. Our next option over is our sort section. So whenever we group something, it automatically sorts on that, and it's not going to call it a sort. This field is not being sorted right now. If we choose to click on this option right here, this is a simple shortcut for adding a sort. Now that I've clicked on that, you'll see it gets a little 1 next to it saying this is our primary sort. And you'll see it adds an option over here in this sort field for how the information is sorted. And you can choose whether it is ascending or descending. Same thing over here. If I click this again, now it is descending. I can remove sorts. And just like with our filters I showed earlier, you can drag and drop other information from over here to add more sorting options to the report that you're working on. This is a pretty simple, sort function. If we, nope, it's not going to let me do it. Oh, you have to have, sorry, apologies. You have to have the information in the report in order for it to be a viable sort option. But now that we have that data in the report, it will let us sort on it. And then again, we can either control the sort from here or from these little icons in the top right. If I grab onto this right here and drag it up, you'll see that it swaps what is primary and secondary sorting. It will sort first by, right now, the way I have it is it'll sort first by city and then by their published response. So what that looks like is I'm sorting by city, and then the secondary sort is alphabetical by the response, by the actual data within that response. Next up on this row of tools over here is our filter tool. We have 2 different types of filters when you're working with these. I pretty much only ever use the meet all of the following conditions. We do have the option to meet any of, so you can do things like it must be either this filter or this filter. So if we said member data must be published, or if we add again, so right now, if I run this, it's going to include people that don't have any information in their published section. So you'll see there's people with no data here, because in my filter section, I have said it must either not be equal to blank, or it can be equal to blank, which means obviously all the data is allowed. It's not going to filter anything out. Whereas if I say it must meet all of the following conditions, even if I leave that there, so now it's back to filtering where I'm only getting data where people have answered this published question. It will not allow it to be blank. This next option over here, you'll see is grayed out, because we do have one last section to work on, which is a chart if we want to add visualizations to our report. So if I click on this chart option over here on the upper left-hand side, this gets enabled, and we have the option to build a chart to view our data. This is where I'm actually going to go swap back to a report that I made ahead of time because it's got information. We can kind of take what we've learned here and apply it to an existing report. I am not going to save. And so I will minimize this chart real quick and let you see, once again here, I have added the member's name is my first grouping. And then my next grouping, this is a financial report. So I'm going to group by the type of transactions this person has made. And then in my data fields, I have two different pieces of data. I have what the description of their transaction is, and then the applied amount. I will talk about why I used applied amount in just a second here. But essentially that is just how much they paid for a transaction. And when I run a report, you'll see here I have, if someone has multiple transactions, I have both a count, they've done 3 transactions, and then how much total they've paid is $75 because they paid $25 3 times. If I add a visualization, it will always grab whatever information is at the bottom down here to summarize this report. And then it will show you the information based on your groupings. So right now I am grouping by their name, and the information it's going to show is how much money they've spent because down here I have a sum. So if I run this report now, you'll see here are all of my members' names, and then here are the amounts of money they've spent. And this is one of the things I was talking about earlier, where if you use ad hoc reporting instead of exporting it, it has a few extra pieces of functionality. So you'll notice when I hover over these columns, it will tell me the exact number. So I can see Martin Smith has paid $585 to my club. I can hover over this outlier right here and say, okay, who has been spending all of this money? Okay, it's Colleen Carter. She spent $5,650. And if I want to get more information about who this is and why she spent so much money, I can come down to my actual report information and scroll down to my C's. And there's Colleen Carter. And I can see there is e-learning is the grouping for the type of transaction. And there's $5,200. And I can say, okay, she signed up for a very expensive e-learning course. That's why her total is so high. I can see here for e-learning, she spent a total of $5,350. And then for her membership renewal, she spent $300. And there's that total amount spent, $5,650. And again, it's shown up here under $5,650. So this is one way that you can use to visualize your reports to get an at a glance, you can see any outliers. So in this specific situation, there's an outlier, Colleen Carter, and I can keep track of that. And then, obviously if I see someone who's spending very little, I can go and see, oh, only $10. What's up with that? And I can scroll down to my T's at the bottom of the report. I can say, okay, this CJ Test account only signed up for the basic membership under a sign up for $10. That's why this kind of minimal bar over here is only $10. But it's really useful for things like seeing who is spending tons of money in your organization and keep track of it that way. The way you can manipulate these charts, so once we stop the running of this report and we're back into the editor, we can come over to this section of visualization. And you'll see we have different types of charts we can do. You can do stacked bars if you have multiple sums that you want to look at. You can do, plot charts. You can even do things like pie charts and line charts, all sorts of different visualization options. Usually bar charts, vertical or horizontal bar charts, are the simplest way to get a look at your information, but you can get really, really in the weeds with the types of visualizations of what data you're looking at. Once you've chosen the type of visualization you want to see, you can choose what data you want to show on that chart. So right here, my labels are going to be my horizontal options here. I am doing member full name. And so it's going to show me that grouping for member full name. And then the value I'm looking at is this sum option right here. I could choose to add different values. If I wanted to say, I want to add my count. Oop, that didn't work. You can click on this little drop down right here, and you'll see I've got the option for all of my group footers and my report footers. I'm already using my report footer, so I can't use that again, but I can say I want to look at my group footers instead. And I will remove this. So now I'm only looking at count. And if I run this report again, I've still got my name, but instead of the amount of money, I'm looking at how many transactions they've done. And so you'll see I'm looking at different results here. And, Martin Smith, the person I'm logged in as, he's our primary administrator. So we do most of our testing on him. And so he's got 15 transactions, as opposed to the, somewhere between 1 and 5 transactions most of our other test accounts have, because we use Martin Smith all the time. So that's how you can change what data you are looking at. With Express reports, you can only pull data that is existing in the Express report already. That's why this dropdown is so short, because it's only going to look at, combined data. There is a way, if you're using advanced reports, to create visualizations that are looking at information outside of what's showing up in the report. That's something we'll get into a little later. With Express views, it's a more limited kind of control over the chart. And then similarly with the formatting tools for it, we can also change our colors and our fonts and how we want our data to appear. We can do things like, excluding minimum values or setting maximum values on the charts. You want to make sure that if you're doing a minimum or maximum value, that it is within, the range to show your data, because if the data is outside of that range, then it's going to kind of break the chart and not give it to you in a true to life presentation. But again, you can change the colors of your charts here. This is just to make things more visually pleasing for whatever you want. Yeah, so that's the easiest way to add a chart to an existing report. Once you have your report done, if you hit save, it will, if we start a new report, I'm going to show you what it looks like when we save. Let's just do something simple. Once you hit save on a report, you'll get this option over here on the right-hand side where you get settings. It's going to ask you to enter a title for your report and choose what folder you're putting it in. So we can just say, this is a test, and we are putting it in our July webinar. And once I say save report, you'll see if I go back to my home tab over here, I have now saved the report I was working on under test. If we go back into our July webinar demo and we click on this, because I've already created this report, it's going to be pre-filled with the name of the report. I can give it a description, and you'll see here the folder is pre-selected for me because it's currently saved in the July webinar. I can't change what folder it's in from here, but if I were to close this and go back to my home, I can just click and drag these around to whatever folder I want them to be in. And then again, in this cell, you'll see I have options down here. I have my export settings. From here, you can change things like, what size paper you want it to export as. So if you're doing, legal report papers, you can do legal size paper, and it'll spit out a report in that size. So if you print it out on legal paper, it will fill the whole page. Whereas if you were to do letter paper, it would not fill an entire legal size page. You can choose any of the more common paper sizes here to export as. Obviously, the default is letter. You can change the orientation. So if you have a lot of data fields, if you've made a very, very wide report, you can change to a landscape printout so that it'll fit more left to right. You can also choose this option here, fit content to page width. If you choose this, when you export, it will stretch all of these fields to fill the whole page. Whereas if you uncheck this, it will just align everything to the left-hand side, and any space you're not using up will just kind of be white space on the page. You can control what formats people can export it in. This is something, I usually just leave all of these checked because, if someone wants to export as Excel, let them. If they want to export it as a Word doc, that's fine. If you really want to control how this report you made is being exported, say, I only want people to get it as PDF, You can uncheck these, and when someone goes to export it, that will be the only option available. Or maybe it's a very data rich format and we only want CSV to be used so that people can pull it into Excel to create useful pivot tables or something of that sort, maybe. Then you can limit people to exporting just the raw data. But again, I usually just leave all of these available to anyone, because if it's not, if you export it, you can export it as many times as you want. We're not going to limit you. So if you try it as PDF and it's not the way you wanted, maybe you come back and try it as a different export. You can choose the default export. The default is always PDF. If you choose PDF, that doesn't really change anything. But if you change it to another format and you just hit the quick export on the homepage, that's the version that will come up first when people are exporting it. I usually, again, just leave that default because PDF is kind of the ubiquitous way that people get reports. Report tree shortcut. Oh, you can choose to flip-flop back and forth between run report and export report. Again, default is always just run report. If you change this, so you'll notice on this homepage, this icon right here, this play, will always take us to the live run version of our report. It's already open, so it's going to do that to us. But if we close this, go back to our home, and if we hit this little play button, it's going to run the report and show us the live information. Stop and go back here. If we were to change that to export, instead of running it, it would export it and download the document. So if we have, say we want to Excel, hitting that play button would just download an Excel file instead of running the report. But I'm going to go ahead and leave this as default. The only really other important section, these other options are kind of nitpicky. I'll go into those more when we're looking at our advanced reports. These create advanced options right here. This is useful, but something I tend to discourage. What this does is it takes the report that you've made in an Express fashion and it makes a copy of it and creates an advanced report so we can take it from there and do more advanced things with that report. So I'll say, July advanced, and I'll put that in my July webinar folder. And then I get this button down here. So when I click this, it's not going to delete my existing Express report. What it's going to do is it's going to create a copy, but the copy will be in the advanced report format with all of this information preloaded. So I can then choose the folder I want that copy to go into, and I'll say create advanced report. And now you'll see here is our advanced report editor. So if I go back to my home page, look in my July webinar folder, I now have this July advanced, and it's got this circle icon, which is our advanced report icon. Whereas these lightning bolts are our Express viewer icon. You'll see again up here, lightning bolt for our July webinar video. That means Express view. The circle icon means advanced view. If I click on July advanced, that's the report, but this is how it looks in an advanced report builder. So it's a lot more detailed. We can go in and edit things. If you are a Excel power user, some of this might look familiar. And then here's all of our section breakups. If I run the report, it looks roughly the same. There's our chart that we made. I can still hover over it because we're looking at it within Ad Hoc reports. And then there's our information where I can then look at the export of it. It'll look a little bit different because it's going to try to force it into the advanced view form. But again, you'll see there's our groupings, there's our counts. So there's our, if we scroll down and go to the next page up here with this little page scroller in the top right, we can go find Colleen, and there's her, 5,650. So it's the same report with that same chart at the top, but it's in the advanced report builder. And again, this is the advanced report we'll be taking a look at next time we have one of our webinars. The reason I kind of suggest, if you're going to do an advanced report, just starting an advanced report from scratch, is because of this. When you look at this editor, it adds a lot of extra rows that are just blank space. And it also pre-fills all of these borders. And it kind of just starts you off with some formatting that you may not be looking for. And if you only know how to create advanced reports starting from an Express report, learning how to manipulate this kind of sets you up at a disadvantage. Whereas if you learn how to do this from scratch using the advanced report builder, it'll be a lot easier to manipulate down the road. Kind of trying to figure out how this translates to an advanced report can be a little bit difficult sometimes. That's all I've got about Express report views. I did want to answer one question that we got before we even started. Someone signed up for this webinar through the clubexpress.com calendar page and submitted a question. Their question was, what's the best way to get additional data elements to join with other tools? So I'm going to go ahead and start a fresh Express view and show you a trick that really helps me. When you're doing an Express report view, we have something within ClubExpress within Ad Hoc Reporting called joins. So all of these data fields are available for you to use, but you might have seen while I was building my report, sometimes they get grayed out and are unavailable to you. So if I go to my member additional data, and again, I'll use this published option here. Once I drag something from additional member data, you'll see almost everything else gets grayed out. When something is grayed out, that means there's no connection between this specific subcategory of data and something else. So there's no direct connection between member additional data and interests. But let's say I want a report where it tells me, are they published and what are their interests? How do I get access to these fields? Why can't I grab them? That's because the common denominator between member additional data and interests is members. You'll notice members is still lit up here. I can still choose information from members. So I can still go say, I want to grab that member's first name. And once I add a field from members, you'll notice a lot of these light back up. A lot of these become available to us. And I can go grab my interest members and say interest member full name. And now I have interest. So it's just a matter of kind of playing hopscotch from field to field until you get the information you want. Something we get asked for pretty constantly is, well, can you, put out a document that says what fields connect to what other fields? The short answer for that is kind of no. We are always working on upgrading ClubExpress and adding new modules. And every time we add a new module or update a field, it is going to change the way these interconnect to each other. So keeping that updated would be a never-ending story. The other reason that it's kind of hard to keep up with is that there are hundreds and hundreds of thousands of interconnections here. Laying all of those out in a way for people to fully understand would be nigh impossible. The easiest way, and this is the way that I kind of keep track of what is connected to what, is just kind of playing around with it. The Express view is a great tool for this. It is much harder to do in an advanced report because you have to kind of have the knowledge of what connections you want before you get started. But a lot of times when I'm working on a report and I'm curious, will this connect to, some other field? All I'll do is I will come into an Express view with this blank canvas and we'll say, I'm curious about these, specifically, let's say donations. What does donations connect to? Well, if I just drag something from donations over, you can see, well, it connects to members, it connects to users, which is both members and non-members, and it connects to user transactions. So that's the easiest way to find out what something connects to, is just kind of start a report, drag that field over and see what it connects to. And anytime you make a connection, it's going to open up other connections. So now if I do user transactions, how much did they donate? Now I get transaction items opens up. So now I can get more details about that transaction item. Maybe I want a description. So the more fields I add that connect, the more interconnections it makes with other fields. It is a learning curve. This is one of the parts of ad hoc reporting that takes the most to understand, is just kind of getting the shape in your head of the way these data connections work. I'll say for me, I have the blessing of working for ClubExpress. So I, had a lot of time to work with this tool right up front. But even so, it still took me a couple months to really have a good idea of what connects to what. And the best way that I learned to use it was just by, making reports. If you're wanting to see if if it's right for you and you start that ClubExpress trial, one tip that really helped me kind of get up to speed with building my own reports was picking an existing ClubExpress report and trying to replicate it. What that does is, if it's an existing ClubExpress report, then that means that those data fields are already pre-connected. We know everything in those reports is connected to each other. So then just replicating it here in Ad Hoc Reporting really gets you up to speed on how to create reports a lot faster, and it'll help you kind of visualize where those connections are. The last 2 points while we're talking about data connections that I want to make before we go straight into a Q&A are about financial. So if we go to here in this money tab, let me clear this out. When you are looking at the money section for this category, you'll notice there's a bit of redundancy. We have user transaction items, user transactions by account. You want to choose whatever is specific to what you're looking for. But my one-stop shop for any financial report is always payments with transactions, because what this looks at is the relationship between both payments and transactions. Those of you who have been with ClubExpress for a long time know that we have payments, but people might use one payment to pay for multiple transactions. So just looking at payments or just looking at transactions may not give you exactly what you're looking for. But this data field, payment with transactions, has a ton in it. And it will always show you the amounts as they relate to a certain payment. So it includes both things like payment date and transaction date within one category, and they all interconnect to each other correctly. Whereas using user payments and then also using user transactions, those two may not talk to each other directly the way you're expecting them to. So that's why I always point people to payments with transactions right off the bat. And then you saw me use this earlier, applied amount. This is the amount of a payment that was applied to a specific transaction. This amount is kind of like my primary place that I go whenever I'm building a financial report, because it's going to break my payment up into transactions. So that's the amount I was using with my report earlier, so that I could see how much was paid into each transaction. It's just probably the most useful financial field that we have. And then last thing before the Q&A, I know I'm pushing up against my time limit, but the last thing is, if you have a chaptered organization and you're having issues with duplicating data or something of that sort, make sure to tune into our advanced report one, because I'm going to go in depth on how to solve that problem. There's a specific filter you have to use because of the way our data is organized that will help fix any data organization issues for multi-chapter organizations. Sam, I'm sure we have a million questions.
We've had 0 questions. I'm kidding.
0. Amazing.
No, we've had so many. So one of the things that came up a couple of times, could you very quickly show how you might remove a data field once you've already added it to your canvas?
Yeah. So once you have your report editor here, these little circles give you this X option where you can remove it. So let's say, I don't want a transaction description. I only want to know how much they paid. I don't care, what they spent it on. Remove, and it's gone. Note, I just lost my chart because I was using that bit of information to categorize my chart. But that's how you remove a data field once it's in there. You can do the same to a group. You first have to ungroup it, and then I can remove it. And so now I just have their name and how much they've spent. And there's a simple report, George spent $25, $25. Amy spent $25 3 times, $75.
And so another thing that came up, which I'm not sure if it's still a question, but if there were any additional fields that a club might have that were created for them, maybe it's an additional piece of contact information. Do you know of any clubs that have those that might also then have access to that field within ad hoc reporting? Or do you just generally see people who create an additional member data question for that?
Yeah. So the way ad hoc reporting works, if we go additional member data here under membership, any fields your organization creates will show up here under additional member data. So you'll see these are all, these aren't standard ClubExpress fields. These are things that we created through our additional member data. And because we created them, they show up here for fields we can use. If your organization had custom work done for just your ClubExpress site and there are fields you want to report on, we can still probably do that. You might need to reach out to support or even me directly or me through support. Either way, it'll end up in my lap. Pretty much if you send it to report, it'll probably end up in my inbox. And I work pretty closely with our developers, and we've gotten very good at adding fields. So if there's a field that your organization wants to report on that you don't see, either it's hidden because there's, again, hundreds of fields. If you open up all of these, these are just the categories here along the left-hand side. Even just the categories, there's hundreds of them. And then each of these subcategories has, 10 to 20 fields in them. So sometimes finding them is a chore in and of itself. You can type up here to search for something. So I can search for transaction. And now I'm only going to see data that has, transaction information tied to it. So that's one way that you can search for that field. If it's still not showing up, I may be able to help you find it. Or if it's missing, we can probably add it. We've gotten pretty good at adding fields. Our turnaround, if it's just a standard field that we need added, is usually either days, at the most weeks. We're pretty good at that.
Another thing that I wanted to point out, so can you do me a favor and click the big bold question mark icon at the top right? Yeah. So that's going to take you to our help system. And on the left-hand side, the last field under that ad hoc reporting topic is ad hoc reports data. So it's like maybe 4 or 5 down from, yeah. So each one of those data categories includes a tiny chart that kind of goes through what data is included, a handful of notes. So, depending on how granular, you're getting with some of those reports that you're running, these might be helpful for you. They might help you understand some of the data just a little bit better. And let's see what other questions we have. Could you show just a little bit of a recap of some of the filters that might be available for some of the fields, like membership status or even event registration or something like that?
So membership status is a great one. So if we wanted to include status in here, if we go to membership, status will be under members. We can go down. They are always alphabetized so that they're easier to find if you know what you're looking for. Go to status. We'll drag status in, and then we click on filters up here. And if I want to filter on status, I can just click on this and drag it over to my filters. And so there I can see member status is right now null because I've left it blank. If you click this little caret drop down, it'll show you the potential answers to this question. So status is an easy one. There's all the familiar ClubExpress statuses that we know, and maybe we only want this report to show us active members. If I run this, now we see status here, active. It's getting repeated over and over. For filters, we actually don't even need the field. We can filter on status without it showing up here. Not so with charts. It has to be in the report. But with filters, we can just say, I only want active members and run. And I don't have to include that data in here. So now I know everyone in here is active. For status, we can even get a little bit more controlling with it. This is something that I recommend you just kind of play around with, but a really useful one is these last two, is one of or is not one of, will give us a multiple choice. So right here, because it was set to active before, it now becomes active. And I can go on this list and you'll see checkoff options. So I can say I want active and expired and maybe trial, but I don't want pending or prospective or dropped or frozen. So I'll leave those unchecked. And you'll see in here, I have active, expired, and trial. And now if I run it, it's going to include data for all of my members that are active members, trial members, or expired members. And you can add as many filters as you want. Keep in mind, if you filter on 100 different things, you might end up getting, a report that says, I'll show you an example of a report that doesn't have anything. If you add too many filters, so now I'm saying, don't show me any statuses. And if I hit run, it's going to say no data qualified because I have filtered out all of my statuses. And so that means all data that relates to a member of any status is not being included. So because I've filtered everything out, there's no data. So that's one thing that you'll come across probably several times as you're learning to use ad hoc reporting, is these no data qualified pages, because you've added maybe one too many filters, or you've, made a typo. If you're searching for someone's last name, you can filter to, I'm filtering to the Johnsons. But if I add a dot to the end of that, it's going to say no data qualified because no one is named Johnson dot.
I actually just learned something. I didn't know that you didn't have to have a field in the report in order to filter by it. So
yep, not for filters
today too.
For sorts and charts, you have to have it, but for filters, you can filter on just about anything, even if it's not in the report.
This is a game changer for me. Another question: can you keep multiple fields across the report but suppress duplicates?
You can. In advanced reports. In the Express views, I don't think we have the suppress duplicates option. Maybe.
So what we're saying is tune in next week.
Yeah. Essentially, in the advanced reports option, if you have duplicates, it will show it once and then leave it blank for the following rows.
Okay.
In Express views, no.
Another question that just came in, this might be the last one. Can you make a field wider? And I'm pretty sure that you can adjust the output in almost any way that you can imagine.
Yeah. So it's just like with Excel, if you go to the top of the row, you can click and drag to make a field wider. So, earlier we were seeing those published answers and it was kind of wrapping the text around. If you wanted it to be just on one line, you can always stretch it to make it bigger. So I forgot I still had my filter on there. So now, and then it shows you that row with it stretched out. So if you had that report I was showing earlier, it would show you with the wider row. So yes, you can always, and even when it's live, you can still manipulate it. So you can pull the data up and then just stretch it until you get to where you want. And if you had multiple rows in here, you can control the width of each column.
And one more question that came in: if you have the ability to edit shared reports. So I don't think that you can edit the actual report, but you do have the ability to make a copy or duplicate the report, and you can edit the duplicate.
So here's an example. You'll see they've got this little lock icon with them. That means that it's something we've shared with you, but we locked it down so that it doesn't get changed for everyone, because these reports are actually the same for everyone that uses ad hoc reporting. So we can't, if I were to change this here, it would actually change for all users. That's why we put a lock on it. But you can very easily, if you want to kind of spin off of this, click on this and then say duplicate. And I'll throw it in my July webinar folder. And now I've got document folders, and you'll notice the lock is gone. Edit and save and make changes to your heart's content.
And so there were some questions about maybe some confusing data that might be showing up in some of the reports that you might be running. So if you're seeing data that is unexpected, give our support team a quick email. Let us know. Try to give as much detail as you can when you send us an email. Like Devin mentioned, it might end up going to him, but the report that you're trying to run and the data that you are seeing versus data that you expect to see. And we can certainly help you out there. But I think that the questions have tapered off. Devin, if you'd like to take it away.
All right. So again, this was part 1. We are shooting for 3 parts. Who knows? It may go on forever, but this is a topic I can talk about for hours on end. So tune in next time. We'll be starting on advanced reports. We will probably stretch advanced reports to multiple sessions, because once you start doing advanced reports, then you could use those reports to do things like chained reports and dashboards. So pretty much from here on in, we're going to do the advanced stuff. So keep an eye out for that, and we'll do some fun formula work, and then I'll see you guys next time.